All right, diving right in today. We're tackling Israel and Iran.
Oh, always a good time.
You know it. Specifically, you know that recent retaliatory strike from Israel?
Oh, yeah.
Got everyone buzzing, trying to figure out what it all means. We're breaking it down today. We've got this article. It's titled Israel's Carefully Calibrated Retaliatory Strike on Iran, Precision with a Side of Drama.
Pitchy.
Right. Almost like a kind of poking fun at the whole thing.
Yeah, I think that tone is, it's interesting because I think it kind of reflects a deeper awareness of how this conflict tends to play out.
Yeah, for sure. So much like posturing and signaling and stuff. Okay, so first things first. Israel's calling this a retaliation, but the article, well, it doesn't actually say what they're retaliating FOR.
Yeah, that is a pretty key detail.
Right. Like what exactly are we responding to here? Makes you wonder if they're, being intentionally vague.
It could be. Leaving that detail vague,
Yeah.
Does allow for broader interpretations and justifications. But they are using some very specific words. Surgical precision, a carefully calibrated response.
So it's not just about hitting a target, it's about sending a message too. What are they trying to say with all this talk about precision?
Well, think back to 1981 when Israel destroyed Iraq's Overak nuclear reactor. That was a bold move, preemptive. But this time, well, the language suggests a more, restrained approach.
Okay.
This focus on minimizing collateral damage. It's about projecting an image of control and capability both to Iran and to the world.
It's almost like they're saying, look, we could have done a lot more damage, but we chose not to.
Exactly. It's strategic messaging through military action, right?
Right.
They're demonstrating that they can respond with force, but they're also being careful not to escalate the situation.
Carefully calibrated indeed. Speaking of strategy, let's talk timing. Our source points out, no coincidences in international relations. Everything is a calculated move. So why NW? Why did Israel choose to act at this particular moment?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. The article mentions a distracted global stage, right? But it doesn't get into specifics.
Yeah.
So we have to think, what's been dominating headlines lately?
Yeah.
Could be, major events, crises, something that's absorbing everyone's attention, maybe providing a kind of cover for Israel, making it less likely they face international backlash for their actions.
It's like slipping something in when no one's looking.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how often we miss these why now moments.
All the time.
Right, even in our own lives. It's not just geopolitics, it's everything.
Absolutely. Timing can be just as important as the action itself, I think. Yeah. And in this case, it suggests that Israel is thinking several steps ahead, taking advantage of that global landscape to further their own interests.
Okay, so the timing seems strategic, but then there's the whole question of a measured response. What does measured even mean here? Is it proportional, restrained? Or is it something else entirely?
Measured. Such a carefully chosen word, isn't it? It implies a certain level of restraint, but it's also, it's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
It could be Israel's way of saying, we're not looking to start a war, but we are setting a firm boundary.
It's like that analogy in the article about the business meeting whisper.
Oh, yeah.
You're not shouting, but you're definitely making your point.
Precisely. It's a way of saying, we have the capability to do more, but we're choosing not to for now.
For now. Ominous. But then there's Iran's response, or, well, lack thereof. The article says they haven't retaliated directly.
Right.
Does that mean they're backing down, or could there be, some other strategy at play here?
It raises a really important question. What does a proportional response look like in this situation?
Yeah.
Because, there's no easy answer.
Right.
Iran, they might be choosing to avoid a direct confrontation for now, but that doesn't mean they're weak.
So instead of an immediate eye for an eye, they might be, considering their options more carefully.
Exactly. Iran has a long history of engaging in proxy conflicts, right?
Yeah.
Using allied groups in the region to advance their interests. They could be biding their time, choosing your battleground carefully. Or maybe they're waiting for that global spotlight to shift before making their next move.
So their silence could actually be a calculated strategy. Makes you wonder what they're cooking up over there.
Silence can be just as powerful as any weapon, especially in this region. It keeps everyone guessing, and it allows Iran to control the narrative, at least for the time being.
All right, so we have Israel making a calculated move, Iran playing it cool. What about the rest of the world? What kind of reactions are we seeing to all of this?
Well, the article describes the global reaction as pretty predictable, actually.
Right.
The U.S., unsurprisingly, is reaffirming its support for Israel's right to defend itself. European leaders are calling for restraint and dialogue, while Russia and China are, well, maintaining their usual ambiguity.
It almost sounds like a rehearsed play, with everyone hitting their marks perfectly. But is it really that simple? Why are these reactions so predictable?
On the surface, it might seem like a simple performance, but let's dig a little deeper.
Okay, let's do it.
The U.S., for example, has this this longstanding commitment to Israel's security, right,
Yep.
stemming from shared values and strategic interests in the region. They see Israel as a key ally in a volatile part of the world. Europe, on the other hand, tends to prioritize diplomacy and conflict resolution, partly due to, their own history of conflict and their desire to maintain stability in the region.
So it's not just about blindly following a script. There are, deeper motivations at play.
Exactly. Understanding those motivations is key to grasping the complexities of this whole conflict. It's not just about Israel and Iran. It's about this whole web of interconnected relationships and interests.
It's a reminder that things are rarely as simple as they seem on the surface, right? There's always more to the story, especially in a region as complex as the Middle East.
Absolutely. And in this case, the story goes beyond the immediate strike itself. The article hints at a bigger picture here. Who else do you think Israel might be sending a message to with this action?
Well, the article mentions Hezbollah, Hamas, and Syria.
Mm-hmm.
Are they trying to send a message to the entire region?
Exactly. This is a clear example of deterrence in action. Israel is demonstrating that it has the will and the capability to act decisively, even if it's a limited action.
Okay.
Think of it like setting a clear boundary.
So even a single strike can have a ripple effect, sending a message not just to the immediate target, but to a whole network of actors in the region.
Precisely. It's like dropping a pebble in a pond and watching the ripples spread outward.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of this strike, goes far beyond Iran. It's a message to anyone who might be considering actions that threaten Israel's security.
Okay, that makes sense.
I know.
But how does this carefully calibrated strike play into the bigger picture of deterrence?
Well, let's break down the concept of deterrence, right? It's essentially about preventing unwanted actions by demonstrating the potential costs of those actions.
So it's not just about punishing bad behavior after the fact. It's about discouraging it from happening in the first place.
Exactly. It's about shaping the behavior of potential adversaries.
Okay.
By making it clear that any aggression, it'll be met with a swift and decisive response.
I see. So by carrying out this strike, even a limited one, Israel is reinforcing its image as a powerful force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully discouraging future attacks.
Precisely. And that message, it resonates not just with Iran, but with all the other players in the region.
Right.
It's a reminder that Israel is not afraid to use force to protect its interests.
It's fascinating how one event can send so many different messages to so many different audiences. It really highlights the complexity of this whole situation.
Absolutely. And that complexity is, it's what makes this conflict so challenging to understand, let alone resolve.
So we have a lot to think about. We've talked about the strike itself, the motivations behind it, the global reactions, and the broader implications for regional stability. But I'm left with one big question.
What's that?
If every action is calculated, as our source suggests, where does that leave room for genuine diplomacy? Can there ever be a real resolution to this conflict if both sides are constantly playing this strategic chess game?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's hard to imagine genuine diplomacy when both sides are so deeply entrenched in this strategic mindset. Every move is seen through the lens of power and advantage.
It feels like they're trapped in a cycle of action and reaction, always anticipating the other's next move, never really stepping back to see the bigger picture.
And that's the danger of this kind of strategic thinking,
Yeah.
It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm.
If you constantly assume the other side is acting in bad faith, you're less likely to engage in good faith yourself.
So how do you break out of that cycle? Is there even a way to do so?
It's incredibly difficult, but not impossible. It requires a fundamental shift in perspective, a willingness to see the other side not just as an adversary, but as a potential partner in building a more stable and peaceful future.
That sounds like a tall order, especially when there's so much history, so much distrust between them.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of courage and political will to break free from those ingrained patterns of thinking and acting. It might even require, outside intervention, a third party that can help facilitate dialogue and build trust.
Like a mediator, someone who can help them see past their differences and find common ground.
Exactly. But even with the best intentions, there's no guarantee of success. It's a long and arduous process with setbacks and frustrations along the way. But the alternative, continuing down this path of escalating tensions and distrust, well, it's simply too dangerous.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, shedding light on the complex dynamics at play in this seemingly isolated conflict. It's a reminder that even actions that seem carefully calculated can have unintended consequences, and that breaking free from cycles of distrust requires a monumental effort from all sides involved.
Well said. And as we move forward, it's crucial to stay informed, to question assumptions, and to consider the perspectives of all those involved. Only then can we hope to understand the complexities of this conflict and work towards a more peaceful future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic on your own, to dig deeper and form your own conclusions. And as you do, consider this. If every action is calculated, does that leave room for genuine diplomacy? Can these deeply entrenched adversaries ever truly break free from the cycle of distrust? It's a question worth pondering.
It's not just about, the immediate players either. Imagine you're a leader in a neighboring country. Watching this all unfold, Israel's actions, well, they send a clear signal, right, about their willingness to use force that has to have a ripple effect on anyone considering actions that might be seen as hostile toward Israel.
So it's like a warning shot, I guess, reminding everyone in the region that Israel's, they're not afraid to act. And that has to affect the balance of power, right?
Exactly. It reinforces Israel's position, right, as that dominant military power in the region. And that has implications for everyone, not just Iran.
This whole carefully calibrated retaliation, I don't know, it's starting to feel more like a carefully orchestrated power play, less about immediate payback and more about, shaping the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It really highlights the strategic depth of this conflict. We're not just talking about, tit-for-tat responses, but about long-term goals and a constant jockeying for position.
It's like a high-stakes game of chess, with each move calculated to set up the next one.
Exactly. And in this game, well, the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah.
It's not just about territory or resources. It's about security, survival, the future of the entire region, really.
They really lean into this theatrical framing of the conflict.
Yeah.
Is that a helpful way to think about it? Or does it, oversimplify things?
I think the theatrical analogy, it works to a point. It captures that element of performance, That exists in international relations. Countries are always trying to project a certain image, right? To influence perceptions, shape the narrative.
Like they're playing to an audience, both at home and on the world stage.
Precisely. But we can't forget that behind the performance, there are real lives at stake, real consequences. This isn't just a show.
Right. The article might have a playful tone, but the situation it's deadly serious.
Absolutely.
There's so much potential for things to, escalate quickly.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial to understand the complexities, to look beyond the surface, grasp those underlying dynamics that drive this conflict.
It's a reminder that the world is, it's messy and complicated. There are rarely easy answers. And even events that seem straightforward, they can be part of a much larger and more intricate story.
That's a key takeaway for sure. And as we move forward, it'll be interesting to see how this particular chapter of the Israel-Iran saga, how it unfolds.
Speaking of moving forward, I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the strike itself, the motivations behind it, the global reactions, and the potential implications for the broader region. But I'm still left with one big question.
What's that?
If every action is calculated, as our source suggests, where does that leave room for genuine diplomacy? Can there be, a real resolution to this conflict if both sides are constantly playing this strategic chess game? It feels, almost hopeless.
That's the question that keeps a lot of diplomats up at night.
Yeah.
It's hard to picture a path to genuine peace, when both sides are so locked into this strategic mindset, viewing every move as a potential win or loss.
Is there any way out of that kind of thinking, or are they doomed to just keep clashing?
It's incredibly difficult, but not entirely impossible. It would require a fundamental shift in perspective, a willingness to see the other side, not just as an enemy to be defeated, but as someone you could potentially work with to build a more stable future.
That's a huge leap, especially with all the baggage and bad blood between them.
It would take immense courage,
right,
and political will to break free from those ingrained patterns of thinking and acting.
What would that even look like?
Well, it might require outside intervention. A third party, someone that can help facilitate dialogue and build trust where there is none.
Like a mediator, someone both sides respect.
Yeah, exactly. Someone who can, help them see past their differences and find some sliver of common ground. But even with the best intentions, there's no guarantee of success, right? It's a long and arduous process with setbacks and frustrations along the way.
Well, even getting them to the negotiating table would be a victory in itself.
Absolutely, yeah. But the alternative, continuing down this road of escalating tensions and distrust, well, it's just too risky.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. It feels like we've peeled back the layers of this seemingly isolated conflict to reveal a much bigger and more complex story.
Mm-hmm.
It's made me realize how much I still have to learn about this conflict.
Yeah.
And how important it is to keep asking questions and seeking out different perspectives.
Well said. And as we all try to navigate this complex world, it's more important than ever to stay informed, to question our assumptions, and to consider the perspectives of all those involved. That's the only way we can hope to understand conflicts like this, and work toward a more peaceful future.
Thanks for guiding me through this deep dive.
Of course.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of the nuances of this conflict and the challenges that lie ahead.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, even though the situation may seem bleak at times, the possibility of peace always exists. It's up to all of us to keep that hope alive and to support efforts to build a more peaceful future.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of Israel-Iran relations. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, to dig deeper and form your own conclusions. And as you do, keep in mind the question we've been grappling with today. In a world where every action seems calculated, is there still room for genuine diplomacy? Can these two adversaries ever truly break free from the cycle of distrust? The answer is out there somewhere waiting to be discovered. It really does feel like they're caught in this endless loop. But you mentioned a potential way out, finding a third party, someone both sides trust to step in and mediate. Has that ever worked in this type of conflict before?
There have been some successes, but it's definitely a long shot. You need a mediator who can navigate incredibly complex, historical and political dynamics.
Oh yeah.
Someone with the patience of a saint and the diplomatic skills of, a master diplomat.
So do you think there's anyone out there who fits that bill right now? Someone both Israel and Iran would actually listen to?
It's tough to say. Maybe a consortium of countries, or a respected international figure who can approach the situation with a fresh perspective and a genuine commitment to peace.
Someone who's not already tangled up in the web of alliances and rivalries.
Exactly. It would take a truly neutral party to break through those layers of mistrust and find some common ground. But even finding the right person or group, that's only the first hurdle.
Right. So even if they find the perfect mediator, what would the path to peace actually look like? It feels so, daunting to even imagine.
It would involve a lot of small steps, confidence building measures, a willingness to compromise on both sides. Maybe starting with small scale agreements on issues like prisoner exchanges or humanitarian aid.
So starting with things where they actually have shared interests instead of just focusing on their differences.
Exactly. Building trust slowly, step by step. It's a long and difficult process.
Yeah.
With setbacks and frustrations along the way. But, the alternative is simply unacceptable.
Yeah. Continuing down this path of escalating tensions, that's a scary thought.
It is. And that's why, even though it's a long shot, the possibility of dialogue and diplomacy can't be ignored.
Right.
it's the only real hope for lasting peace in this region, really.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think about. It's highlighted how even a seemingly isolated event like this retaliatory strike is actually part of a much larger and more complicated story. It's made me realize how much I still have to learn about this conflict and how important it is to keep asking questions and seeking out different perspectives.
That's the spirit, staying curious, questioning assumptions, and being open to different viewpoints. That's crucial, especially when dealing with such complex and sensitive issues.
Thanks for guiding me through this deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the nuances of this conflict and the challenges that lie ahead.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, even though the situation may seem bleak at times, the possibility of peace, it always exists. It's up to all of us to keep that hope alive and to support efforts to build a more peaceful future.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of Israel-Iran relations. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, to dig deeper and form your own conclusions. And as you do, keep in mind the question we've been grappling with today. In a world where every action seems calculated, is there still room for genuine diplomacy? Can these two adversaries ever truly break free from this cycle of distrust? The answer is out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered.